Hey guys, I'm Sage Valentine. Let's get down to this review of tonight's season finale of Fox's Scream Queens, season 1, episode number 12. It was a double episode. So, there was so much craziness just packed in the first 10 minutes of the finale that by the time we made it to the end, I was just like, we need a second season. And I'm sure there are some people on social media who are probably saying, you know what, I'm done with Scream Queens. I can't handle this anymore. I don't want to watch this anymore. No, you guys can't just leave us with that scene with Chanel almost getting stabbed, which is like putting weird question marks over my head, because now I'm wondering, was that Hester trying to kill her? Is that a new killer? Like, what's up with that? On top of the fact that in the beginning of the series, I started noticing weird little things that gave me this weird feeling that there was more than one killer. And as, of course, it turned out to be Gigi, Boone, and we learned tonight that Hester was one of the killers, and we learned last week that Pete was one of the killers, but Pete revealed in tonight's finale that there are a bunch of killers. So who is this person trying to kill Chanel? More importantly, how many people watching this review figured out that the killer was Hester? If you figured out that it was Hester, do me a favor and leave me a comment in the comments below and let me know. Because quite honestly, as I've been saying in all of these reviews, I was just like, it's going to be the most random person that's going to be the killer. But I knew that it was not Grace and it wasn't Chanel number 5, because to me, they seemed like red herrings. Meaning like the writers kept throwing things in that seemed to point in their direction. But it's crazy how Hester was hiding in plain sight, acting weird. And the fact that this chick knew all of this stuff in regards to how to kill people, that threw me off. And I was just like, is Hester one of the Red Devil killers? Because there's something off about her. She doesn't seem right. On top of the fact that when she appeared in episode 1, the way her hair was styled, the way she was dressed in that like late 80s, early 90s tracksuit just didn't sit well with me at all. Now, I don't know much about like neck braces, but what I know of from scoliosis is that it has to basically be removed by a doctor. So the fact that she took it off and people really didn't notice that she took it off and she was walking straight and everything, and she would make like little comments about like her neck quote unquote hurting, but for the most part that part made me kind of scratch my head. But then again, when it came to Hester, everything about that character was a little shady. Okay, so in the first maybe 15 minutes of the first half of the finale, we learned that Pete killed Roger and Pete killed Boone, which blew my mind because I assumed that the female killer killed Boone, but it turned out it was Pete because Pete had had enough of Boone and just basically stabbed him without question. But this makes a lot of sense that Pete was that killer because the killer never said anything. It just sat there stoic. On top of the fact, when it comes down to Pete, I also started thinking about that scene with Roger and Chanel 5, their whole 7 minutes in heaven sequence, when Pete basically killed Roger but never really looked at Chanel 5, paid her little mind, and just went on. And I was like, why did the killer do that? But now it makes sense because Pete was so focused on the Dickie Dollar Scholars that he didn't even pay any mind to Chanel. She wasn't on his radar, and she certainly was not on his hit list. So pretty much Pete's motivation in being a killer with the twins and Gigi was to stick it to the crazy institution known as Greek life. He wanted specifically to take down the Dickie Dollar Scholars and found a kindred spirit in the twins and Gigi because they wanted to take down Kappa Kappa Tau. Kill two birds with one stone. But the thing was that Pete wanted to stop killing. But at the same time, Grace was not trying to hear that. I was not trying to hear that because I didn't trust him after he said that. I was like, Pete is just absolutely crazy. But so Pete stalked Chanel because Chanel embarrassed him in front of the other members of Kappa Kappa Tau. When she lured him to her room with the promise of sex, but little did he know there was an audience waiting and listening, and he stood there dressed as one of the characters in or from the movie Clan of the Cave Bear, and everybody jumped out and he looked like a fool, so I guess this also sparked his crazy as well. But I think the scariest part of the first 30 minutes of this episode had to be that scene when Pete was about to tell Grace who the female killer was, when out of the blue, the Red Devil appeared, stabbed the crap out of him, and then grabbed Grace as she tried to run, and then they were fighting, and I was like, oh my God, this is the end of Grace, and then she slammed her on the ground and knocked the hell out of her and knocked her out. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, like, how am I going to cope? And then it just went to commercial because karma came for Chanel a couple times during this episode. The first time it came for her was when she sent out that angry email because, of course, she was pissed at the other girls without Grace because Grace was not down with killing the dean about basically ditching her at the pool. And little did she know that the Red Devil, who is obviously Hester, got that email and pressed send. So pretty much everybody everywhere, every major news outlet knew about this email, and everybody on campus, probably in the whole entire area outside of the campus, hated Chanel. So Chanel wanted to kill herself, and she sent away for an asp, like this really poisonous snake. And someone sent her a garter snake with like a sweater around the snake. Thanks to Zayday, Chanel learned the truth about that snake, and she decided not to kill herself. She decided to change her life and fix what was going on with Kappa Kappa Tau. Before she could enact this plan, here comes this random Red Devil, and for some reason I thought it was Chad because of the voice, and I was like, oh my God, is that Chad? It turned out to be some random pizza guy who ended up being strapped with dynamite, and he blew up, and I felt so sorry for that dude. But for like 1 second before that time, when that timer went off and I heard that laugh, I figured, okay, maybe he's okay, and then poof, and every piece of him was just all over the walls and all over the floor. When Grace said she needed her father to take one for the team, I had no idea what that meant, but once they showed us that scene, I was cracking up just seeing her father, Wes, lying across the bed in those black briefs with his leg up, like all like lusty, and looking at the dean, and the dean's just looking at him like, what the hell is going on here? But then she went along with it. I should have realized that obviously it was a ruse to cover up the fact that Zayday and Grace were going to use the dean's computer to go through all of the high school records from the different girls, or the Chanels. And she basically learned that Chanel number 6 Hester was not who she said she was, and this chick claimed that she went to Sweet Valley High. And a short-lived TV series and a couple of straight-to-video movies. But Chanel, regular Chanel, had this idea that she wanted to apologize to Melanie Dorcas, and I should have known, obviously, that that was not going to go well, because the next thing you know, Chanel was trying to stab Melanie, claiming that she was the Red Devil killer because of a lie that Hester told her that some chick with a veil and markings on her face was walking around with a shovel saying dork, 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 like she couldn't say her last name. Thank God for Grace and Zayday. And then the 4 of them returned back to Kappa Kappa Tau to find out that Chanel 5's Tinder little notification was fake. and the fact that apparently Hester got stabbed in the face with like a red pump or something, and Hester woke up and pointed fingers at Chanel number 5. And this left me completely confused because I was like, how in the heck did Chanel number 5 do this if it was revealed that Hester was the killer? And then I was just like, what is going on? And then the show decided to give us this bird's eye view from a couple of